Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Classic Gamer 74. I'm your host, Anthony Gamer, and in today's episode, we're going to discuss the game Renegade, or as it's known in Japan as Neketsu Koa Kunio-kun. Before we get started, I want to say a great big thank you to all my subscribers and friends and family that have sent me well wishes. I'm feeling a little bit better today. I'm not completely out of the woods yet, but I'll let you know as things develop. And again, I appreciate the prayers, the positive messages, and the positive energy that you have all sent me. Thank you very, very much. All right, so enough of that. Let's get into the happy stuff. So what we're going to talk about today was the very first game in the Kunio-kun game series. Now, it was known as Renegade in the West and was developed by Technos Japan and distributed by Taito, there I go again, for the arcades in 1986. In Japan, it was known as Neketsu Koa Kunio-kun, which roughly translates to hot-blooded, tough guy Kunio. And of course, Kunio, also known as Alex in the Western world, is the protagonist of the Kunio-kun games, with a couple exceptions, that is. Now, this series in this game was created by Yoshihisa Kishimoto, and he claims this game was semi-autobiographical, partly based on his teenage high school years getting into daily fights. So Kunio is kind of loosely based on himself, and he also drew inspiration from the Bruce Lee martial arts film Enter the Dragon. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I've already covered two games in the Kunio-kun series, that being River City Ransom and Super Dodgeball, and there are other games to come, which I will cover in later episodes. But for today, we're going to talk about Renegade. And another thing to note is that the gameplay and the story, and even cosmetically, the game was different in Japan than it would get in the West. So without further ado, let's get into Renegade. Alright, so let's start in Japan first. Now, this is Neketsu Koa Kunio-kun. Now, in this game, the story is that Kunio's best friend was beaten up by these different gangsters, as you can see from the screen. And now, Kunio has decided to go out and get revenge on these bad guys for doing that to his best friend. As Kunio moves across the city and fights these different gangs, each of them have their own boss. You can see here he's fighting outside the subway and beating up these guys. Now, you are unarmed during this, so you have to rely on your kicks and punches in order to accomplish what you want to do. Next area you go into, you're fighting against this motorcycle gang. One thing you'll notice about this game is that it doesn't ease you in. Those gangs are tough and they come out swinging pretty hard. And they're not, like most coward gang bangers, they're not afraid to gang up on you and have like two of them beat you up at the same time. And also you may notice if you play the later Kunio-kun games that cosmetically Kunio himself and his enemies look a little bit different and would change as time goes on to the form that we're pretty much all used to seeing him in. After that long battle with the motorcycle club, and don't expect to beat this game in a hurry, your hands and fingers are going to get a real workout. Anyway, so after beating the motorcycle club, he moves on to this next gang of tough girls, and believe it or not, their leader is probably the toughest boss on this game. Just warning you ahead of time. After a long and arduous battle against the street girls, you move on to the last area where it looks like you're fighting the Yakuza at this probably illegal auto yard. Now, believe it or not, these guys and the final boss are not as hard as the last boss you had to fight, but still, it's quite challenging. And finally, you make it to the final boss, the head of the Yakuza, and I guess head of all the gangs in the city. And when you beat him up, you have avenged your friend and all the other people that have been bullied by these gangs throughout time. And everybody's happy, and it's the end. Now, just to give you an idea how tough this game really is, I'm going to upload a playthrough of this to my Patreon so you guys can see just how hard this game actually is. Okay, so now let's look at Renegade, the westernized release of this game. As you can see right from the first screen that, yeah, they have really localized this game a lot to make it appeal more, I guess, to Western audiences. Now, the story itself is actually different too, as in this game, Alex, is going to fight against these different gangs because his girlfriend was kidnapped. Again, which is a typical damsel in distress, which is actually, I think, more popular in Western countries than in Japan, so kind of giving an American feel to it. So you can see that the first battlefield is quite similar to that of the Japanese counterpart as you begin fighting in a subway. Alright, now the second area is essentially the same. You're fighting against a motorcycle club, but again, you can kind of see that the members of the motorcycle gang look a lot like what we in the West consider a motorcycle gang to look like. So, just as tough. Another thing I'll add here is this game is just as tough as the Japanese version, so don't think that, oh, I'm getting the American version, it's going to be easier, because no, it's definitely not. Okay, and now we're at the third area where you're fighting against the tough street chicks. I don't know what to say. Maybe it's a little racially insensitive here, but I'm not gonna go there. And you can see that the signs in the background and everything have been changed to make them more westernized, like the $20 up there, and of course Taito is advertised on one of the signs itself. But the girls in this section are just as tough as they were in Japan, so be ready for quite a fight. Okay, now you've made it to the next area where you're fighting against, I guess these are supposed to be mafioso type guys. I'm not gonna say anything else about it. And yeah, they're pretty tough too, but this will lead up to the climactic battle against the final boss. I guess the people at Taito in Technos Japan decided that the final boss in the original Kunio-kun game was a little soft, and yeah, he definitely was. So they decided to step up his game a little bit here, as he has a gun and he has other thugs fighting with him. So this final boss battle is a little bit tougher than in the previous game. And the game ends. Alex has successfully defeated the gangs and rescued his girlfriend. Everybody's happy. The end. And then the game just starts over again, even harder than it was before. Of course, since this game was such a big hit on both sides of the world, it had to be ported out. And what better place to port it out than for the Nintendo Entertainment System? And so in Japan, they released the Neketsu game for the Famicom. Now, we're looking at that right here. Now, you can see, of course, that they had to change some stuff because of software and memory limitations, but they actually added on a couple cool levels, as you'll see as we check this out. Of course, you start off in the subway, just like in the arcade. Now, after you beat the first screen, you actually go on to the subway car and beat up some guys there, and then you beat the area boss after them by leaving the subway car and fighting in the station once again. In the next stage, you fight against the motorcycle gang. The cool part, though, is at the end of this mission, where you actually steal a motorcycle and you fight them on motorcycles, which is kind of a cool addition. And here is that part of the stage right here. Pretty cool, actually, and although it is kind of brief, it's still a pretty cool add-on that they made for the Famicom release of this game. And once again, you are fighting against those bad street girls. Not only are you fighting them outside of a bar, but then you have to go inside the bar and fight them again. And now Kunio is back on the street fighting another gang in the alley where he had just been fighting the ladies. And I think this is the last stage, because this is where I gave up. You go into a club, and you have to go through a series of doors and find the right doors. And I just basically gave up, because I played this for like about a half hour, and I kept going back out to the street. And I just basically gave up at this point. So overall, like I said, not a bad port. The additions are really cool. Just that last puzzle element there of the doors kind of is a bit of a turnoff, but not enough that I'm not going to play this again and again and again and try to figure it out. That same year, 1987, the NES got their own port of this game. This was released by Technos Japan and Taito American Corporation, and basically, it's the same game. They've just localized it a little bit, changed some of the sprites, but essentially it's the same game as the Famicom. The second level, you go to the subway, or actually the second part of the first level, I guess you could say. You go into the subway car, then you exit the car, and then you fight the final boss. Like I said, it's pretty much identical to the Famicom version. You even have the cool level when you're on the back of the motorcycle. Unfortunately, it also has that kind of craptacular ending part where you're going through the different doors. Unfortunately, I opened the door to the big female boss, and I couldn't get any further. So I didn't do much better in the American version than I did in the Japanese version. So if you get a chance to check out any of these versions of the game, I highly recommend it, especially for those of you that played Renegade on the NES growing up. It might be kind of cool to compare and contrast the Famicom and the NES version, and the same thing with the arcade as well. Another thing I forgot to mention is that Renegade itself would actually get several ports, not just for the very well-known port on the NES and Famicom. It would also get a port on the Amiga, the Amstrad CPC, Apple II, Atari ST, Commodore 64, MS-DOS, the Sega Master System, the ZX Spectrum, and the Thompson, and a remake would be made for the PS2. In the year 1990, the company Ocean Software would make their own sequels to Renegade, that being Target Renegade and Renegade 3, the final chapter. These were released for the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC, and MSX, but never had an arcade version, of course, and Target Renegade was also released for the NES. By request, in our next episode, we're going to discuss the Postal game series. Well, that brings this episode of Classic Gamer 74 to a close. I really hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed presenting it to you. If you did enjoy it, let me know by giving me a big thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to click that little bell icon down there so you'll be notified when I upload any new episodes. Connect with me on all my social media platforms, check out my Teespring store, and please check out my Patreon, where I have some videos that you're not going to find on this channel. Yep, some ones that are too hot for YouTube. So please be generous and help me out on Patreon. The link is in the description below. Well, until next time, this has been Anthony Gamer. Again, thank you for all the support through this difficult time. I really appreciate it. I will see you all in the next episode. Until next time, be strong, be safe, be happy, be healthy, and above all, take care of each other, be kind to each other, and stop hate of all kinds. See you soon. Bye for now.